my fellow webheads. It's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco, and I am here today to talk to you about the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 55. So, as many of you know, as if you're subscribers here to the channel, I have been doing this video series for over a year now, where we are exploring the art of every issue of the Amazing Spider-Man, going all the way back to Amazing Fantasy 15. If you're new to the channel, make sure you check out that playlist so you can catch up on all of the issues and where we're at. Like I said, today we're going to be looking at the Amazing Spider-Man number 55, which is, I believe, the third part of this ongoing story arc of the return of Doc Ock. So I'm very excited to get there and take a look at it with you today. The other thing I do want to mention as well is the, actually two things. One, the push to 1,000. So we are looking to try to get the channel up to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2026. As of this recording, we're getting there. We're making great progress, and that's all thanks to you. So thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed or anybody that shared the channel with somebody that you know would like it so they can subscribe as well. The other piece I did want to share, so now there's three things, but the other thing I noticed recently in looking at the information is more people who are watching are subscribers. So we've reached the point where more than 50% of viewers are subscribers. That's fantastic. And again, thank you all so much for your support. When we get to 1,000 subscribers, a lucky channel subscriber will win this Amazing Spider-Man illustration. This is 11 by 17 full color Spider-Man illustration by yours truly. It is a 100% free and will be shipped to one random subscriber drawn again at random. And so you can win this just by clicking that subscribe button. Costs you nothing, takes 2 seconds to do, but makes a huge difference for the channel and puts you in the running for this. The other thing I want to talk about is my second video series that we're doing here, similar to this one, but based on the Incredible Hulk. So I've got a history in Gamma, the story of the Incredible Hulk, and we are looking at the art of those issues as well. And so far we've had two videos, obviously with issues 1 and 2, and it's getting a lot of great traction. So if you're a fan of the Amazing Spider-Man and other Marvel characters, so if you're a fan of the Hulk as well, make sure to check out that playlist. There's some, like I said, there's two videos so far. There's been great feedback, and I'm very much looking forward to having some special guests on the channel with me to look at future Hulk issues as well. That said, to celebrate the Hulk, we also have this Incredible Hulk piece, and this will also be going to the lucky 1,000 subscriber drawing. So when we pick the winner of the 1,000 subscriber free art drawing, they're going to get Spider-Man and the Hulk together. So this is another, excuse me, 11 by 17 piece by me. And one person will get both of those. So again, all you have to do is click subscribe and you're in the running for those two pieces of artwork. So thank you all again. That all out of the way, let's get over to the comic and check it out together. Okay, so we have the cover to Amazing Spider-Man number 55, and I think this is a great cover. I did do a little bit of research in that obviously this is not the first time that an artist used this concept with a cover. The idea of you have the face either of the hero or the villain reflecting who they are fighting, or who, you know, whatever the situation is. And I made some examples. I wrote down some examples in my notes of great uses of this this trope, or, you know, this concept. There are some that go way back before. Now, again, we're talking, this is the late 60s. So this is still an early example, but there are even earlier ones. But some that you could check out, there's Daredevil, Batman, of course, Wolverine on the cover of the Hulk with the reflection in the claws by Todd McFarlane, very classic. We'll get to that in our Hulk series eventually. Of course, Iron Man, G.I. Joe, Green Lantern, Silver Surfer. All of these have awesome examples of a large character that has something reflective, whether it's a mask, armor, whatever, and it's reflecting their adversary. So this is very, very cool. It's very powerful. The face is obviously simple, but it's the concept, and you see the action of Spider-Man being held up by Doc Ock's arms in peril. Very, very good cover. Again, the kind of thing that's going to make someone pull this off the stands. One thing I did want to point out as well, I tried to find a better version of the cover to look at. Unfortunately, due to the age, some of the, you see scans of them, they're not always this good. And of course, there's the recolored version, which I want to avoid altogether. I want to look at this original because I'm fascinated with this coloring technique on Doc Ock's face. As you can see, like with the goggles, the red and blue on Spider-Man, the green of Doc Ock's clothing. Usually, things in 4-color comics are just one color. Yeah, it's green. It's a mix of cyan and yellow. It's red. It's a mix of magenta and yellow. And those combinations of the 4 colors, the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, is what makes all of the colors that are available in this printing technique. I would have thought that having this green tone on Doc Ock would have been really hard to do with the printing technology of the time. Again, because things usually are broken out into clear shapes where you can cut. Because again, you're talking about old printing techniques where you're literally running the paper through the printer multiple times to apply different color, and you have to block out the areas you don't want that color. So, like, for example, the areas that are white would be blocked out when it passed through the yellow printing process, the printing pass, because you don't want any yellow dots in the white. You want to keep that straight white. So that would be all have to be blocked off or masked off. Anything that doesn't have yellow in it. So the blue of Spider-Man would have to be blocked off. But how you did it consistently to keep the printing so that each cover was the same, but have this green tone added to Doc Ock, I don't know how they did it, but I think it's absolutely fascinating, and it really does take this from a good cover to a great cover. So adding those tones of green, which again, you notice like his goggles are green, his shirt is green. We associate so much of green with the opposite of Spider-Man. The Green Goblin, the Scorpion, the Sandman, Doc Ock, the Vulture, everything is green. And so, having those green tones on his face is just phenomenal, especially for the time. I think it really stands out as a really impressive cover. As I always mention, this is a scanned PDF copy of the comic. I did not scan this. Marvel scanned every issue of The Amazing Spider-Man up to, as far as the run was up to in 2004, and put it onto CD-ROM drive that you could buy. That's what we have here is the scanned file on my computer so we can look at it together. So you'll see all the original ads. You'll see the nicks and tears, the weathering of the paper. This is what it looks like printed on newsprint and not computer recolored. So that's what we're looking at today, just as it was back again, still in 1967. So quick recap. Dr. Ock has come back. Spidey has stopped Doc Ock from stealing what is called a nullifier, which apparently appears to be this new military device that is supposed to, they say originally, it's supposed to help deflect or disrupt the guidance systems of enemy missiles that might be shot at the United States. That's how they describe this thing. It would disrupt the targeting system of a missile. That's all they say. Doc Ock tries to steal it, to sell it, and Spidey manages to stop him. So then Doc Ock needs a new hideout, so he decides to go and rent a room from Aunt May, of all people, of course, which Peter finds out naturally. So that doesn't last very long, and Spidey ends up calling him out, and the two fight. And in the ensuing fight, Aunt May sees them. She has, of course, naively grown fond, let's say, of Doctor Octopus. She thinks he's a wonderful person and Aunt May hates Spider-Man, and so she collapses in shock with her bad health. So Peter is furious that that's happened. He wants to get his his revenge. He is going to get his pound of flesh from Doc Ock, and he is on the hunt. And so here we go. Great splash page, jumping right into action. Spidey is literally ripping this base apart to get to these guys to find out where Doc Ock is. And I'm reminded we've only seen it a few times, and I think it's mostly been in regards to Aunt May when something's in peril or somebody's stopping him from helping her. Spidey gets really mad, and a really angry Spider-Man is no joke. Again, I know it's very it's super nerdy to say, but I've always been a big fan of the Marvel handbooks. So the Marvel handbooks were these comics that came out, I'd say I think they started in the 80s. Probably the early to mid 80s, where each character would get a little history and then an explanation of how their powers, and it would tell you how strong they were and all this kind of stuff. And Spider-Man, according to the Marvel handbook at that time, could lift over his head about 10 tons. The idea of lifting a city bus over his head without, straining. That was not a problem. So we forget when he's dealing with thugs and criminals and he's kind of batting people around, or, even like Doc Ock, who's not super strong, punches Spider-Man. We forget that this guy can lift a bus, a full-size bus over his head. So when you see him ripping the building apart, the metal of the roof, again, we were reminded, hey, don't mess with Spidey. Great image, very nice twist to the figure here. The reaction, it's bigger than somebody might normally do, but that's what makes it exciting, is this big twist of the form. Great hands. Again, if you want to show a lot of tension and energy in your figures, hands. Bend those fingers up. Don't just have them in fists or flat like mittens. Have your characters doing stuff with their hands will really help sell the energy and the what's going on in the scene. This is nice choreography here of this little fight of Spidey beating up these thugs. These are guys that work for Doc Ock. So he moves from move to move, and it all pretty much makes sense, right? He jumps in and kicks a couple guys. Somebody lunges at him, and he flips him behind him into the equipment, and we've already set up what side that equipment is on. So again, everything is making sense. And then the guy tries to jump him from behind, but of course you can't sneak up on Spidey, so he elbows him to take him out, and these guys are out of the fight. And then Doc Ock tells him via monitor, he's not there, you won't find me, you can't stop me, just never mind, you're an idiot. And so he's furious, and then again Spidey destroys the lab, just absolutely demolishes. So again, don't forget, angry Spider-Man is not to be trifled with. So nice stuff there, good poses. I love the this upshot of him, frog jumping over the guy and throwing him into the machinery behind him. Very nice pose on the figure. It's a great angle. Much more interesting to go from. So we're looking down, then we're looking up. Now we have Spidey, more of a static shot in the third panel here where he elbows the guy, and then the turn where he turns and sees Doc Ock on the screen. Really, really good stuff. I thought it was terrific. And John Romita is in his element at this point. He is really, I think, dialed in pretty well on his take on Spider-Man, and it's much more consistent, and we're seeing much more interesting stuff than we did his first couple issues. I did want to point out, I'm sorry, I didn't even say at the very beginning, this is another, of course, issue written by Stan Lee and drawn by John Romita, and inked by Mike Esposito. So Spidey is swinging away, and he's gonna, call it quits for today, but he'll be back. He's gonna keep looking for Doc Ock. This pose is okay. It's a little stiff. It feels like he's standing on the air as opposed to swinging through the air. I guess just because of the flatness, how this foot feels like it's standing on something. I would have liked to have seen this leg extended maybe a little more, something like that. But this pose in the next panel is awesome. So one of the things that I put in my notes, which made me think about this, it's a great zoom out. So we see the city. He's swinging by this building. It really gives us a sense of where he is and how he moves through New York. I think it's terrific. But what it dawned on me was so many times we do, as comic book artists, we do this. You have a panel or a full page or whatever, and you're trying to draw that character, and you just start drawing. I want Spidey swinging. So you start drawing, and then you go, let me fix this, let me fix that, blah, blah, blah. And you get into a big pose, and you're trying to make that big pose work. Sometimes these little poses can have more energy, more dynamics, more just coolness of just taking and having, you just kind of throw that arm. It's just a line and a leg and shading out the back of the left leg and the foot because his body's casting a shadow on it, all that stuff. Now, if you took this little pose, which is far superior to the one on the left, blew it up, and then redrew it with the detail that you have on the left, that would be an all-time incredible Spidey pose. So my point here is, again, if you're a new artist or an aspiring artist, one of the things to take note is start small. Take those little drawings, those little figures, the little studies that you're doing, little motion drawings, little sketches, and then sometimes blow those up. With scanners and stuff today, super easy, right? You don't have to own a Xerox machine like in the old days to blow stuff up. So you could scan it, make it bigger, print it out, lightbox it, or however you work. But you get so much more, it feels like, energy and motion from these little images sometimes because they're simple, quick, and it keeps you from stiffening up. So sometimes when you're drawing and you go to those big figures and you got to put in a lot of detail and it's capturing that whole panel, sometimes those figures can really stiffen up compared to this, which feels much more sketchier but much more energetic. So use those little images. Don't just do them for practice. You can really translate those into great stuff on your page. Military is talking about how they're going to protect the nullifier. And of course, Doc Ock has a spy in there. And I love the fact that everybody is perfectly lit. There is no super strong shadows. There's plenty of light coming from above. But in this image where he's thinking to himself and identifying himself as the spy, he is all kinds of in shadows, as if he's like under a direct spotlight. But you block out his face, his nose, his mouth. Very nice stuff. It's very it's kind of techniques that you would use in old film, like film noir, and stuff like that. You take your little psychological tips to the audience to go, hey, see this guy when he's walking and all of a sudden he's in full shadow and everybody else is in light? That's the bad guy. So great use of that there. I really like it. I know later that image really reminds me, again, if you're a Marvel Comics fan or a comics fan in general, you know what I'm talking about here when I say this. This image really reminds me of John Byrne. So I don't know if this is something that John Byrne took. I don't know if it's the hair, the size of the head, the way the shadows are. It just feels very much like a John Byrne. And of course, this is way before John Byrne's career. So I would say John Byrne clearly studied at the master's feet, of John Romita, and took some of the Romita-isms with him. Because that, to me, I just saw it and I went, that looks just like a John Byrne face. So Peter goes to visit Aunt May while she's recovering from her shock of seeing Spider-Man fighting Doc Ock. And Mary Jane shows up. And man, Mary Jane is being portrayed in the story arc lately as just absolutely like insufferable. I mean, she shows up at her aunt's house that has a giant hole in the wall because Doctor Octopus broke a hole through the wall. And she's just like, hey, it's groovy. Let's check it out. Hey, Pete, you want to hang out? Let's go. Let's take off and listen to some tunes and dance. And she just is shallow and just terrible. Like, just really terrible. And whereas Gwen Stacy comes in, is giving subtle little jabs, and was like, hey, I'm here to see if there's anything I could do. So it's clear, and you clear the reaction of when Peter sees MJ, he's like, ugh, I can't, I gotta deal with her. Gwen shows up and he perks right up. Hey, what a surprise, Gwendolyn, wonderful to see you. So that's a deal where it's clearly setting up the move from Peter being interested in Mary Jane to Peter being clearly interested in Gwen, and MJ kind of being bumped to the side of that triangle. Doc Ock, so we shift here. I'll say this, I've mentioned it in numerous videos. I do not like the change of a scene on a panel as your first panel or change on a page. I don't like the first panel or the last panel of a page being the change of a scene in the middle. I want this whole page to be part of the MJ, Gwen, Peter looking at the hole in the wall, flirty, snarkiness, whatever. Then you turn the page and you start with a new scene. Again, think about it in terms of television. If you change scenes in a show and they have for 2 seconds, you change scene from, let's say, we'll go from the police department to the bad guy's hideout. And the bad guy goes, so Bob, what do you think? What are we going to do now? And then it cuts to commercial. And then you come back and you're still in the bad guy's hideout. And Bob goes, okay, I got a plan. Why did you break that in with a commercial? Makes no sense. That's what's happening here by changing scenes mid-page. So I would have liked to have seen that played out a little different. Of course, I mean, you're limited to the number of pages you have per issue. But for me, it's just how you plan it. The drawing of Doc Ock and all the technology he has and him talking to that bad guy, that minion, who's all in shadows on the screen is great. I will say one thing, though. There is some scale problems that John Romita has from time to time in keeping things in scale with one another. So what I mean by that is we've seen Doctor Octopus's arms. So this equipment panel in front of him is a wall. It has knobs, buttons. Everything is on the same layer. So the screen that he's looking at, the buttons next to it are all on the same layer, and then, same plane. And then there's a control board that comes out towards him. So he's a little farther away from it. But this arm, let me zoom in so I can really emphasize this. This arm is itty bitty turning a dial. That's fine. This arm is pulling a lever. These two things are on the same plane. Now, maybe this arm's a little bit closer because the lever would stick out. But this arm, I would argue, is slightly bigger than this one. So if the issue is that it's tilted away and it's going off in the distance, then this arm over on the left should be even smaller than this one. And so this is my problem. We've seen that these arms are big enough to grab a man, grab Spidey by the wrist or grab onto equipment or smash stuff. So the arm itself shouldn't be changing diameter. The claws on the ends can grip, but the arm doesn't change. And so here you have a scale problem where this arm is too small, and it did stick out for me, and was something I was like, I don't like that. Again, we have that guy in the shadows. Not as good a drawing as the last one. I liked it better where it was more shadow in the way it was done. Here it almost looks beard-like. I think because the nose is not shadowed, so not quite as strong as before. But I like the move from the video screen to the live Doc Ock, and then he's moving in this it says power maintenance, so essentially in a electrical repair vehicle. And then here's another example where I talked about scale. So I understand maybe So this is Colonel John Jameson. So this is J. Jonah Jameson's son, who is in the Air Force, who is an astronaut, right? And we've seen him a bunch of times. This head is gigantic in comparison to these other guys' heads. Now, he's supposed to be big, strong, I guess. So he could be taller, he could be bigger, but just the size of the head really struck me as, wow, this guy has a giant, giant head. So again, scale-wise, I think maybe paring that head down a little bit would help him fit in more with the people. Otherwise, it really stood out. It just kind of drew me in, and I was like, I don't know why is he so big? And then let's see, what else did I have? Oh, the other thing I thought was odd, right? So they have the nullifier, and I guess they're trying to move it to a safe location, is the idea. And so you've got cars and a truck, so they're doing escort duty and moving it along, on a pre-planned route. But why? So John Jameson, he is an astronaut, so that means he would be in the Air Force. Why is the Air Force? Plus, he's in a blue uniform, which typically is Air Force. All of these guys are dressed in Air Force uniforms. Why would the Air Force be protecting a piece of military equipment compared to the Army or the Marines or something like that? I get it. They do it so that you can have John Jameson in the mix of the story. So from a story perspective, I understand, but from a logic perspective, it doesn't make sense to me. But that's okay. Doc Ock is hiding under the manhole so that he can stop them. So Doc Ock pops up and he's going to grab the nullifier. I liked this big shot. So this is a great wide shot of him smashing all the cars so that the people can't get out. So he's used some smoke grenades, and then he climbs on and he uses his arms to smash the engines and the doors of the car. The glass, he mentions, the glass is bulletproof, so they can't shoot through the glass at him, just like somebody can't shoot through the glass at them. So now these guys are trapped in the cars, and he can walk off with the nullifier. However, I also asked the question again of scale. I understand in 1967, cars were a lot bigger than they are today. But look at the size of this car. So if Doc Ock is a normal sized man, even if he's a little undersized, this car has to be close to 7 feet wide. I mean, it's crazy how big this car is. And so that just kind of threw me like, man, these cars are massive. Or Doc Ock needs to be drawn bigger, which is probably the reality. I mean, again, I understand 1967 cars were bigger than today's cars, but if you look at the size of his foot, and if you said that his foot is anywhere from, let's say 10 inches, right? Which is kind of average size man's foot, almost 1 foot. This hood would be like 1, 2, 3, 4. This hood alone would be like 6 feet long. I mean, it's crazy. So again, scale is something that's important, that sometimes can be easily done incorrectly or overlooked. I cannot ever emphasize enough that, remember, these comics were not drawn over, we're not produced over 6 months. These were not, 120 page graphic novels. These were 22 page stories that came out once a month, and you had to get it out there. There's no, I'm not ready, I'm going to miss the deadline, whatever. So if you drew this and it took you 8 hours to draw this big panel, or to do the whole page, and then you looked and went, "Ooh, Doc Ock's a little small. Maybe I should redraw that." You don't have time. You got to move on. You only have 22 days to draw 22 pages. It's a page a day to keep on pace for printing. So sometimes you just got to fudge it and move on, and maybe that's what happened here. I like the concept, like I said, and the imagery. I just think Doc Ock is a little out of scale. So takes off with the nullifier. Again, great stuff. Really nice camera work. So you've got this close up of Jameson trying to contact headquarters because they're stuck in the car. So you don't need all the imagery of the car. There's some twisted metal to let you know what's going on, but that close up of his face is what's important for the tension. Doc Ock taking off with the box with the nullifier in it and using his arms to support it. It's great. And then I like the shadows as he's getting into his van to take off. I think that's a really nice touch too. And then lastly, you use the broken military vehicle as a framing device. So it gives us that foreground, because otherwise, if you just see the truck driving off, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. Well, it makes sense. We know what the truck is, and then you have the word balloons. So we go, okay, that's Doc Ock. They're driving off in the van. But having this framing lets you know that they're just leaving the scene. This isn't an image of the van 2 blocks away or 40 blocks away. They're just leaving this scene of the crime. So, and that's what's left. So I think that's a terrific framing device of that page. So then, of course, we have J. Jonah Jameson shows up, and all I can say, my note, I did not mince words. I said JJJ is an idiot. So of course he's like, Spider-Man did it, right? He was helping, and even if you didn't see him, he was here, right? And finally, his son is like, Dad, stop, just stop. He has nothing to do with Spider-Man. And then the other piece, we have Robbie Robertson. So again, he's been introduced a couple issues ago, and he works for Jonah. And again, he is that balance point to Jonah. So Jonah's idiotic hatred of Spider-Man, when he's like, oh, well, Doc Ock is Spider-Man in disguise. And Robbie has to be like, Jay, come on. We've seen them together. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. So he's the voice of reason. J. Jonah Jameson is he's Don Quixote, right? He has this mad obsession. And there's Robbie trying to balance him out a little bit. They try to find Peter. Harry is super mad. So this idea that Harry Osborn is eventually not going to be Peter's best friend, I mean, we're clearly setting that up a bunch. We'll see how that plays out. I do want to point this out as well. So we've talked about it before. I want to explain what a tangent is. So a tangent is when you have two things that are at different levels of depth, but the contour lines or the lines of them line up so perfectly that they begin to blend together. And there's a tangent here on Harry Osborn, and it's pretty subtle, but I wanted to point it out because this is one of those things that, again, if you're a young or an aspiring artist, watching out and eliminating tangents from your art can take you from one level to the next level. So if you look at Harry here, so you've got the contour line, the outside of his face, and you see how it comes down, and right here where these lines of the knuckle are, so that's great. It's just the wrinkles of the knuckle, which make perfect sense. It lines up perfectly with the outline of his face. And then it goes through where his fingers are spread because it's a well-drawn hand. But now you see that line continue. And because it looks like, if you, again, you're zooming out, we're looking at it closer. But if you look at it regular size, that line almost looks through, and it looks like it clips through his finger. So if you look at it quickly, it looks like you can see his face through his finger, basically. And now starts to confuse, what is this? You also have this coloring error where his teeth aren't white. And so because the teeth aren't white, their skin color, it's the same color as the finger. All of a sudden it starts to read strangely as, is this we know it's a finger, but when you glance at it, are those his teeth? What is happening here? So again, you just want to be careful of those tangents. And that's a good example of a minor tangent that isn't the end of the world. But when you're looking for stuff, like I am obviously with these videos, it's something that's going to pop out to you. Oh, one more actually, I didn't even notice this before, but as I see it, I'm going to point it out. Let's go back to that. So you have, make it even bigger. Why not? Okay. So you have the line, the contour line of his face, the wrinkles of the finger, then this line up here. It continues to come down, and then it matches up with that line comes through the line of his, I guess, his pajamas. That line all in a row, all lining up with the finger, the little dashes of the finger wrinkles. Again, when we're looking at it big, no problem. When you zoom out and you look at it at actual size, or should be actual size, you can see it looks like this line goes straight through, all the way down. So that's just something that's very easy to avoid and just something to watch for. This is a great angle of Spidey. I really like it. It feels like, so there's a tilt to the city, which is that we've talked about it a whole bunch. That Dutch angle where you turn your world from being perpendicular to being off center, and Spidey going the other way. So it feels like the city is tilted this way, and then Spidey is tilted this way, kind of the way that the leg is going up. So I like that juxtaposition. It really makes us, it creates that sense of upside down, a vertigo-y kind of thing, where that if you were Spider-Man and he's swinging almost completely upside down through a city, it would feel that way. So I really like that a lot. I think that's a great pose. And it's a very nice transition to get Spidey into the scene. So we've got, the wreck, and now the news and the police and other people are there. Now they call, where's Peter? Because we want pictures. Well, here's Peter. So I think that's an excellent way to do that. Oops. So then this is a good establishing shot of the chaos. So we've got Spidey looking down, and you see everything all smashed up, and still gas is all going around. So again, just a nice down shot to give us that establishing shot of all the chaos that happened. And then Spidey takes off because he thinks he knows where Doc Ock is going to be. I said that the Spidey swing is not very Spider-Man-like. It's very classic superhero-y, and I think it's because he's throwing that fist out instead of, webbing for his next line that he has to shoot to. He's going forward like a Superman flying type pose, or Captain America leaping or something like that. But this is what you want. You go from, Spidey's searching around. Now it's time to get serious. It's superhero time. So it's a good pose. To me, it's just not as Spidey as I like. Then you have this switch. So this is where, again, why do this? Why wouldn't this be the last panel here? And then this next panel is an establishing shot of Doctor Octopus arriving at Stark Industries, then him adjusting the nullifier. So it's a subtle thing you can do, and for whatever reason, John Romita does it constantly. That last little bit on a page or the first panel on a page is where he always changes his scenes, and it drives me crazy. I wrote this just from a story perspective. From an art perspective, the nullifier is a very classic Marvel doodad. It has Kirbyisms a little bit. It has like these weird rings around this thing that becomes a handle that, would serve no purpose. Little divots and insets and, weird twists of metal, things of that nature. So it's very classic that way. So the design, the look of it is good. From a story perspective, I said this thing makes no sense at all. As I said, when we first saw this device, they described it as something that would deflect missiles, right? So it's going to disrupt missile guidance systems. So you think it's some sort of maybe like a microwave, or it's some sort of an energy wave that's going to disrupt the electronics within a guidance system of a missile. That makes perfect sense to me. I'm all good. Well, Doc Ock decides to turn it in, he says it makes a few adjustments so that he can hold it like a weapon. He doesn't say he's changing the function of it, just how he can use it. But now he's like, oh yeah, this will stop all mechanical devices from operating, including guns, telephones. I'm like, that makes no sense whatsoever. So it stops motion because a gun doesn't have anything electronic to disrupt. It's all based on switches, springs, motion, physics. Like, there's nothing in a gun that a energy wave could stop. So it makes no sense. Now, if it's sort of like an EMP type of device, an electromagnetic pulse device, it could stop things that are electronic because that could disrupt electronics, but it wouldn't stop firearms. It's not how firearms work. They're 100% mechanical. But he mentions this will prevent any and all mechanical devices from operating. So makes no sense whatsoever. I did like this. This is a classic Stan Lee. We love it. Even though Iron Man isn't going to show up, we have mentioned and name dropped Tony Stark and Iron Man here to remind you that they're all part of the big overall Marvel universe that Stan has been building here. So he loves to do it, and this is another good example of that. These pages are great. Again, artistically, this is where I love it. John does this. John, like I knew him. John Romita does a great job. When the action begins to ramp up, the panels become bigger. So again, let's just real quick. When you get into things like this, people discussing what's going to happen, how's Aunt May feeling, how are things going with the house, Mary Jane and Gwen kind of catfighting over Peter. Small panels, because these are heads, these are talking heads. It's going to be a lot of dialogue. There's not a lot of action to show. Let's not waste the space on the action. You can draw the faces in different angles and different expressions, and it gets the point across. When we get to, all right, now it's time to get going. Doc Ock is making his big push. Spidey is on the way to stop him. Now the panels expand and become bigger, and I think that is a great idea. This is a terrific angle of the cops. So the phone is dead. Their guns don't work. Then you also have a similar up angle on, so we're in the foreground here. We see the cops. You see Doc Ock in the background. Now it's like a zoom in. It's like a zoop onto Doc Ock. And as he's looking through this, I guess, viewfinder for the nullifier, where he's, shutting down Stark Industries. Great stuff there. Now we pull back from a reverse view again to see where he's in. So he's through the gates. He's blasting the factory with the nullifier. Nothing can stop him. And then zoop, we zoom in again. So it's a here to here. Then we pull back and zoom in. So great uses of those camera moves, but similar angles. Terrific stuff. Doc Ock thinks he has won, but of course Spidey shows up. Swinging in is great. This is a terrific pose, and I like how all the bodies on this page, I think this one and the next one, everything is in constant motion, which makes perfect sense. We're getting to the heart of the action and towards the end of the book. So Spidey swings in, great pose here, terrific stuff. He leaps in to try to take out a couple of arms, which he does. But so as he comes in from up above, Doc Ock bends over as Spidey is struggling with the arms. Now you have this really cool bend and twist to Doc Ock as he's struggling to try to counter Spidey's attack. Awesome. They flip off of the truck, the top of the truck there. So again, you see like he's all off balance. And so it makes it very logical that Spidey would be pulling him off of the top of the truck, but his legs save him, and he uses them to then push back and kick Spidey off him. Again, really good stuff, all moving from left to right, which is very important. You want your action and your imagery to move from left to right, because as Western readers, we read that as movement, progression, forward. So you want your action to, as much as possible, kind of move in that left to right motion. So just awesome, excellent stuff here. Same thing with this panel or this page. Spidey landing on the ground after being kicked off and landing on his fingertips is, to me, is so John Romita. So, or I guess I'm just gonna say Romita, because I feel like I've seen this exact pose with John Romita Jr. too. He loves to do that, where Spidey, is landing and doing stuff just on the fingertips. So I feel like I've seen that throughout father and son's storied career, and it's just a terrific pose. I will say, I mentioned this in the previous episode, it hasn't been bad here with maybe this exception. Don't put your character, their hands, their feet on that bottom panel. The panel cuts off just the slightest tip of a finger, so it makes it look like the fingertip is resting on the bottom border of the panel, and that flattens the image. It totally wrecks the space that should be there between us and Spider-Man. Any foreshortening you're doing with those fingers is gone, because it looks like it's just straight coming up vertically from the panel border. So avoid those. This is phenomenal. So Doc Ock crosses his arms to try to pin Spidey down by the neck. I think that is very, very cool. Great use of a close-up of that too, even without you being able to see the expression on Spidey's face. You still feel that, like, whoa. Really cool stuff there. And then this figure of Doc Ock in the air as Spidey's trying to shove him off. So he's all bent. The arms are going all over the place. And then Spidey flips him. Awesome. I love this figure. This is so good. And just a master class on how to move your characters through space. So really, really nice stuff there. The only thing I did say is it felt to me, because of the position here, Spidey is on his back. He's got one leg up. So to get to here, he has to pop up with the, push the weight of Doc Ock and the arms off, which he can do, and sort of pop up to his feet. In my mind, I think it would have made better sense if he kicked him and flipped him over his head, right? So if you flip this angle and instead of Spidey being on his feet right here, he's on his back, his legs up in the air, and it looks like he sort of, in wrestling, I believe they call it the monkey flip, right? Where a guy foot and you kick them over the top and they flip over. I think that would have been more, from a choreography standpoint, would have made more sense. It's harder visually for us to fill in the gaps for how did Spidey get from here to here. So that's a little tougher. But again, that's a very small nitpick on my part, where I feel like this is good. It could have been, that next step a little better. Yeah. What did I say? 3-4 doesn't match dialogue. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's a little bit weird. Like, Spidey gets the upper hand, and Doc Ock's like, "I've been toying with you. You think I'm worried about losing to you?" But he's getting flipped over, so it's kind of weird to me. And it's not like he got flipped over and used that as a thing to defeat Spidey. So it's kind of weird. Again, real nice stuff here. These are all good. The one thing I said about this panel, so when you come from this page, everything, as I mentioned so far, is really moving from left to right. Makes a lot of sense. And it's good. All of a sudden now, Spidey's on the left. He's thrown Doc Ock off to the right of the panel. Now we switch, and now it's an opposite angle. It's fine to do that, but what if you just flipped this panel? if you just flip this panel horizontally, so it was the other direction, it doesn't change anything in terms of the story. Still works perfectly. The background still works. And then in the next panel where he's continuing to try to cover his face with webbing or web his arms up or whatever, now Spidey's on that left again. It makes sense. So, and then when Doc Ock grabs him and swings him over his head, he's pulling him from the left to the right. Everything again flows, even to the next page. Spidey's on the left. So this panel should have been flipped horizontally so that it's Spidey's facing the other direction. I think would have made a huge difference in just the flow of the storytelling. So now Doc Ock again grabs the nullifier because apparently the nullifier can do anything. Now I'll say this, he does say, he's like, I don't know what it'll do, but at least hopefully it will stop your web shooters, which would make sense. If it can stop guns and anything that's mechanical, Spidey's web shooters shouldn't work. But it completely affects Spidey in a way that makes no sense. So I'm like, how does this thing work? Like, it's crazy. So it says here, it affects the radioactivity in Spider-Man's blood. So it affects radioactivity. So if it affects that, does it make him lose his powers, or would it make him sick, or like what's going on with the radioactivity? That doesn't, right? No, it gives him amnesia. This nullifier is amazing. It can do anything. Apparently it serves soft serve ice cream. It could do your taxes for you. Like, this thing is awesome. So he has no idea who he is. He doesn't remember Doc Ock. He doesn't remember anything. And immediately Doc Ock takes this opportunity and is like, no, you work for me. We're criminals. That's why you're in this costume. He's like, okay. And that's how it goes. I love the evil grin in this last panel of Doc Ock. I'm going to zoom in on this because I think it's great. This evil grin is terrific. It's not too many teeth, but it's a lot of teeth. It just works terrific. And then I like the confused wrinkles in Spidey's mask. It's one of the few times we've really seen an expression through the mask where you're starting to see these wrinkle lines, and we have not really seen that before. So I think that's terrific, and it's a nice way, subtle way to sell the confusion of Spidey at this time when he has lost his memory. So there we go. And then that is it. That is the end of the book. So kind of a crazy story, a lot of setup, and a funky ending for sure, but we have more to go. Let's cut back over to the desk and we'll wrap things up. So there you go. There's Amazing Spider-Man 55, the continuing saga of the return of Doctor Octopus, and now Spider-Man has amnesia and thinks he and Doc Ock are working together. So crazy stuff, a weird story. The nullifier thing makes no sense to me. There are a few points in there, like I said, artistically, where there's some scale issues. You got to be careful of some tangents. But coloring, like the coloring on the cover, I talked about that at the very beginning, is just out of this world, especially for the times. Today's coloring, you can do all kinds of stuff like that. It'd be very easy. Back then, man, what an achievement for the printing of the time. Some of those Spidey poses, the fighting, the choreography, one thing of flipping a panel to make it more consistent, but minor stuff. So I'm going to try to overlook the wackiness of the amnesia and the nullifier that does anything and everything, to look at this story and again give it another 7 out of 10. It's not an all-time classic, but it has a lot of really good stuff. It does set us up for more of the story, but that's about it. It doesn't really get us into anything very new in terms of what's going on with Spidey's supporting cast or anything like that. So overall, it's good. It's not great, but I'm very interested to see how this concludes, and how long the Amnesia story goes. So something we will be seeing in the next few issues together. Thank you for your time and checking out the video today. Don't forget, 1,000 subscribers, you can win free artwork. Amazing Spider-Man piece, Incredible Hulk piece. So check it out. Don't forget to check the new Hulk series. Those are coming out on Wednesdays. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, hit those notifications, and you'll know about both videos when they come out. Otherwise, thank you all for joining me today. I appreciate it. It was wonderful being here with you, and I'll see you next week with even more Spider-Man.